experience sometimes. So we have an excellent panel here who are experts in this field. We have Matthieu Chéreau, who is founder and CEO of Tigerlily. Hello. Victoria Ransom, CEO of Wildfire. Hello. And Rezab from Socialbakers, co-founder and CEO of Socialbakers. And, hi. And to kick us off, I believe you have some interesting findings.
Yes, correct. We have some great data slides, so we should get to it then.
Okay.
All right. So my name is Rezab, and I won't be disturbing the panel for that long. Can I ask for the slides, please? Can I ask for the slide? Oh, thank you. All right, there we go. So basically, just to quickly introduce Socialbakers. Socialbakers is a social media analytics platform, and we measure today more than 5 million Facebook pages and Facebook places, a couple million Twitter profiles. We started monitoring recently Google Plus and YouTube, and we sort of take that data and mash it up and create interesting information and interesting studies. So obviously, you know, traditional advertising will eventually die, so we have to get used to that, I guess, and prepare for social media. And in social media, what's important is that, you know, companies, major brands have their fan pages, and you know, everybody sort of really rushed to that without even thinking and just getting fans and getting fans. But as Michael from Buddy Media put it, you know, you have to. It's not only about fans; it's also about engagement. So let me show you some sort of real data on engagement by monitoring basically those millions of Facebook pages. This is the industries and their different fan counts, average size of the fan base of the top 50 fan pages in that specific industry. And I'll always be looking at the top 50 because if you go further on, then you can't really compare and analyze. But if we look at the largest industries on Facebook, it's obviously FMCG, it's gaming, it's fashion, and again, those are brand industries. And if you look at, you know, smaller fan bases like non-profit, but still quite big, still on average like 800,000 fans, that's great, right? If we look at by engagement, we get to, the most engaging is actually non-profit, followed by games and alcohol. So really engaging categories, and this again is about average engagement, about people doing posts. And if you look at the relationship between those two, sort of an index of what I would call a fan push index, how much do different industries have to push in order to get engagement, and the size of their pages is weighted, you can look at, you know, FMCG and fashion actually have to, you know, really try the most in order to get engagement, and nonprofits don't have to try that much. They naturally get engagement. If we look at the top pages by engagement, we get to Angry Birds, obviously, you know, very, very engaging page. Heineken, Dior, and other companies. So those are the top engaging brands in the world today. If we look at the social element of like the people who talk about, then we get Victoria's Secret, for example, 384,000 storytellers, or again Angry Birds and other. We see obviously retail like Target, Macy's, especially now because people who talk about it as a 7-day metric, especially now considering the holidays, people are like, I'm at Macy's, you know, I'm there, so they immediately look at that. We also did a study that we will sort of hand out that you can get over there for the web attendees and you know what's where and stuff like that. But I think one thing to point out is nice. If you look at the Google and the Facebook engagement, Google has double fan engagement than Facebook on Facebook. Sort of, I think that's interesting that Facebook's really consistent with their engagement rate algorithms and are not, you know, pushing their pages a little more. We also analyze the top media companies, which you can find there. But again, let me just open that with data and just thank you all for getting that and get back to the panel. Thank you, Jan.
So some interesting, an interesting way to set things up there. Any thoughts about the findings there?
Well, it's really interesting to see the level of engagement depending on the sector you're dealing with. And of course, there's a huge discrepancy between non-profits and other sectors like iconic brands, like luxury brands, etc. And it obviously depends also on the amount of money you pour into these kind of actions, but also the kind of experience you offer. And those experiences are very much different, whether we deal with luxury, we deal with media, etc. And we're starting to see some really strong points of differentiation between all those kind of sectors in the way that they offer social experiences around their products, or around their content, etc. So I really think that the more we're going to advance, especially next year, the more we're going to see really innovative and quite original way to offer social experiences, whether it deals with non-profits, whether it deals with luxury, etc. So beyond those figures, it's pretty much now about the way you're going to engage specifically with users.
Yeah.
And we're very much focused on that.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think the engagement data is interesting, although not necessarily surprising in that I think I mentioned it yesterday on a panel actually, what we found, so what you really got to think about is why do people engage? And I think what we found, they'll really engage, they'll want to share something, they'll want to push something out to their friends if it expresses something about themselves and what they feel passionate about. And so I think seeing nonprofits right there at the top of the list in terms of engagement makes sense, because people feel proud to be associated with nonprofits. They feel that they're doing good for their friends, for themselves, if they share that kind of content. So I think what that comes back down to is just brands, no matter what kind of business you are, really need to think about how do you tap into these passionate user groups, how do you connect with your users in a way that they're going to be really excited about the content and be willing to share it. A company I really like as an example of where you might expect it would be hard for them to get people excited about them, but they've done it very well, is duct tape, the tape brand. I mean, tape doesn't sound really very exciting, right? If you look at duct tape, they have a very engaged Facebook page. I think they have over 5 million fans. And what they've done is they've found a user base that's really passionate about using duct tape for crafts. They've tapped into that, and so there's all these great examples of people creating clothing and ball gowns and out of duct tape, and so they were creative about, okay, we have a product that's not that exciting, where can we find a passionate user base, and then they've got people sharing like crazy around that. So I think it's pretty consistent with human behavior that we've seen, but really interesting data.
That's really impressive. If anyone had ever asked me how could you make duct tape social, I wouldn't have thought, amazing stuff. So Jan, is there any brand or business that you think is using Facebook really effectively, or in a way that really exemplifies good practice?
I think that those duct tape examples are obviously great. I think anybody that goes and does a little bit of an edgy job and creates content that's a little edgy. I'm not saying over the edge. I'm just saying a little, discussable, shareable. Those things just generally work. And if you look at what the beauty brands have done, for example, if you look at companies like L'Oreal, they actually have a dedicated content team just to Facebook. So they do special videos for just Facebook, and then they go and, you wouldn't, for example, expect L'Oreal to have Hugh Laurie as an ambassador, and then they go around and ask people, did you know that, that guy is an ambassador? They're like, really, no, and they share those videos, and those have millions of views and, thousands and thousands of shares. And I think creating those, engaging pieces, engagement content pieces, consistently over time, because you can't just be campaigning them, right? Facebook's not about campaigning. Facebook's about consistent content publishing. So creating that is important.
Okay. Matthieu, any brands you think, or businesses you think are particularly notable?
Well, I really like the Victoria's Secret page because it offers so much to college college guys.
Something you're passionate about.
Yeah. I feel that it's really interesting. I'm not that passionate about it, but I think it's really inspiring. They're doing lots of stuff in kinds of offering to college people, offering badges, offering some ways that those communities can appropriate their products and their brands. And I think it's really interesting the way they personalize the relationship. So social is very much about personalizing the relationship. And I do think that the more we're going to to offer new experiences, the more we're going to offer personalized experiences. That's why I see this page as a good example.
Okay, so we've talked quite generally there, but if someone's watching and they have a page and they've set it up and it's going nowhere, and they need some practical examples of things they can do. So growing an audience, first of all, Victoria, what are good ways of growing an audience on Facebook?
Yeah, so certainly some of the things that we've worked exceptionally well. So Wildfire provides a whole bunch of different kinds of tools, and one of the things we enable companies to do is very easily launch different kinds of social media marketing campaigns. And of those different campaign formats, they serve different kinds of goals. So things like user-generated contests, fabulous for getting engagement, getting people sharing, talking about your brand, not necessarily so great at growing your audience. So the couple of campaigns, when you talk about campaigns specifically, that we've found work really well for growing your audience. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that would say it should be all about engagement. Yes, it should be, but if you don't have an audience yet, that's exactly what you should be focused on. So things like giveaways, sweepstakes, really work. And particularly we've seen the most rampant growth when you are able to give away something. So coupons, or buy one get one free, or literally come into our store and get something free. To give you an example, we did a campaign a while ago for it's a company called Edible Arrangements, where they basically create baskets of fruit that's cut to look like flowers, and they gave away to their fans a voucher to get some free chocolate dipped strawberries. They started with 7,000 fans. By the end of 2 days, they had over 100,000 fans. What was great is people had to go into their store to actually get their free chocolate dipped strawberries, so it was really great for sales as well. In fact, they had their best month in terms of sales during that period of the campaign. So things like that work really well, but you generally have to put some media spend behind it as well. So I think some companies make the mistake of thinking they can just create a Facebook page and people will suddenly become their fan. Well, they've got to hear about you somehow. Making these kind of campaigns social, so that you might advertise, pay for someone to come to your page, and then they share with their friends, and so you're getting a whole lot more people, a whole lot more bang for your buck. But you've got to put some effort in. I think that's the biggest mistake, is companies just don't put the effort in.
Right, okay. And Jan, any thoughts on growing an audience on Facebook?
I totally agree with Victoria here that, do content, build, things that, there are two types of campaigns that you can do. You can do campaigns for engagement, you can do campaigns for growth. They support each other, obviously. And you consistently have to do that. I mean, we've seen brands that have just started posting to their Facebook page and just, campaigning heavily on engagement with, 1,000 fans. How's that gonna help you? Or we've seen companies launch 12 fan pages for the different verticals when they didn't have a real fan base to start with. So I would say, building that fan base is just the #1 step for many companies. Obviously, many are there, but many, are just starting. Michael said earlier that 95% of businesses are on Facebook, but only 9 million Facebook pages. I mean, there are millions of small medium businesses in Europe only. I mean, tens of millions. There are probably 100 million in the US, but those are not on Facebook yet. So I think that finding the engagement down to a level, like if I'm a small business and I change tires, and if I get 100 tires and make a little campaign, well, 6 people come to my shop, and effectively, it's how do I get the 100 people, and how do I get them then to the shop? So.
Actually, I definitely agree with Victoria, and I would say that coupons or invitations or any kind of promotions are not only a way to grow your community, but it's also a way to drive traffic to your point of sale, or to drive traffic to your website. So it's an amazing way to generate visibility and eventually conversion. I mean, we see some outstanding conversion rates, even for paid stuff. Up to 50% actually, so that's the first part. And another level of engagement is all about creative apps, basically creative campaigns. And then again, it's not only about growing your community, of course it perfectly works with M&M's. We're doing that all year long, each month. And so you recruit lots of fans, of course, but it's all about also adding some quality content to your page and actually increasing visibility very much in a really short period of time. So it's just not only growing your community, it's what you do with it, of course, in terms of visibility, in terms of quality, and in terms of conversions eventually.
Well, you talk about conversions there, and F-commerce is a kind of buzzword that's flown around of late, and it seems because I cover technology news and startups, I get pitched a new F-commerce solution every week, pretty much. Lots of companies seem to be moving into this space, so selling things on Facebook. What are your thoughts about that?
I think everybody is fed up with it because it doesn't mean a thing, and it's all about providing a social experience around your product. And it doesn't have to be on Facebook necessarily. You don't have necessarily to feature a product, or maybe you just should do that, not providing the whole catalog within Facebook. It doesn't make much sense. So I would say that F-commerce might be relevant on your website first. And of course we do F-commerce, we do it with Longchamp especially, but it's all about featuring fresh products on a regular basis and providing a social experience around it. So F-commerce is all about providing a social experience around your product, not only on Facebook, but also on your website and eventually on mobile, who knows. So we have to offer some kind of navigation to users so they can interact with products, whether it is on Facebook, website, mobile. And that's what we focus on. So we can get to know those users better and get to know their interests, what they like, what they buy, etc. And eventually, again, personalize the relationships. F-commerce should be that. Okay. Not a buzzword, an empty buzzword.
Victoria, any thoughts on Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually we've seen really exciting examples of people using Facebook to sell products. But in our experience, it's much more about using Facebook to generate the initial interest, which I think is what you're saying as well. Get people excited, get them sharing about your products. But the actual transaction, I think, can happen on a company's website. I think recreating your entire shopping cart and putting it into Facebook is a hell of a lot of work, and I haven't seen the rationale yet for actually doing that. But to give some great examples. We have a client, it's not a huge company, so I think what's also exciting is to see it's not just big brands that are succeeding in this area. They ran a campaign, so it's a company called, I'm going to just completely forget, Blowfish Shoes. So online shoe retailer. It was a year-long campaign. Basically, they used Facebook to get the initial intent. So they gave away a free pair of shoes every single day. So that's pretty substantial. But what that meant is every day they were able to announce a new winner. Every day people were talking about this. So you would go into their Facebook page. You could see what shoe was being featured that day. There was video about that shoe. There was displays of other products that were similar to that shoe. And then there was a really big call to action to go to their website, to their e-commerce site. Over 60%, I think it was 65% of people that engaged with that campaign on Facebook then went on to the company's website and spent a good amount of time browsing the goods on the website. And over almost 50% of the sales that they made during that year-long period came from people engaging with that campaign. So a super great way to get people learning about products, sharing with friends. There was lots of sharing going on, but the actual transaction was happening off of Facebook on the website.
Yeah, and definitely, and I'd like to add to that, as Socialbakers, we also measure, there's a category called e-commerce, which are like online retailers. And I wouldn't forget online retailers because those guys already sell their products, on quote-unquote on Facebook. But they basically, what they're doing typically is they're just sending links to their website, like go buy this, go buy that. Some of them do it the smarter way. They get people enthusiastic about the product using great pictures, great quality content again to get them excited to go to their website and buy. So I think it's about getting people excited, as Victoria said, and obviously getting people also socially engaged about that. So basically things like reviews, things like product pages, and generally campaigns around specific products that might be really cool.
Okay. Now, we've talked about things you can do on Facebook, things you can post on Facebook to help bring in an audience, but Facebook's newsfeed can seem a very confusing thing, and you can post up all sorts of content, and the people who like your page may not see that content because it's not a real-time feed of everything. The newsfeed. Facebook uses something called EdgeRank. How can people make sure that their content is seen in the newsfeed without having to actually go to the page?
I mean, it's really, really important. People have to watch their engagement rate, and if their engagement rate goes up, their edge rank and impressions will go up. So the answer is really simple. Get that engagement rate on your page up above your competitors, and then you'll get above that clutter. And obviously, you'll have average content, and then you'll have likable content. So the likable content will get to a significantly larger portion of your fans, and then the content that's sort of mediocre, your core fans will get that. The ones that really like your page often, but then a really good update would get to everyone, for example.
Yeah, and the way to get that engagement up. So Facebook has an algorithm. They will try to judge how interesting your content is. If it's interesting, it'll be displayed to more people. If Facebook judges that it's not interesting, very few people will see it. And the way, to the best of our knowledge, or some of the main ways that Facebook judges is content interesting. It's kind of obvious. Are people liking it? Are people commenting on it? And fortunately, there's some fairly clear ways that you can get people to like and comment on your content. Well, the first thing is just try to make sure that it's interesting content. So be thoughtful. Don't go for volume, go for quality, and be thoughtful about why the heck would my particular audience, think about who your audience is, be interested in this. But beyond that, just telling them what you want them to do really makes a difference. So if you want people to like your content, ask them to like it. So we've done tests where we'll post a video and say, hey, check out this interesting video. Then we'll say, hey, check out this interesting video. If you like it, click like. And you get 10 times more people liking it. Best way to get someone to comment is ask them a question. If you haven't asked a question, why would they comment? And by the way, make it as easy for them to answer as you possibly can. If your question requires a yes, no, do you think the web was awesome? Yes, no. People will write yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So it's really easy for them to respond. So I mean, those are ways to increase the engagement levels. Having said that, your goal might be to generate really, really quality responses and to learn a lot from your audience. So then yes, no is not so useful. But yeah, these tactics can really be helpful. The other thing we've noticed is Facebook doesn't just look at each post in isolation. They're looking at an average of all the content that you're posting out, to the best of our knowledge, over a 7-day period. So again, this concept of quality, not quantity, is really important, because you may be sending out one really great post, and then if you send out 20 that are really crappy, well then that's going to put a negative effect, or a negative halo effect, on all of your other content. So it's just, again, common sense. Be thoughtful about what's going to really interest your audience.
I would say there's some things to do and things to not do, and as you said, spamming on your page is definitely not a thing to do. And I would add to that publishing on many pages all at once is definitely not relevant for your communities, because you basically publish the same message to communities that might not be interested by this message, and it's really not something to do, because it goes really under the average level of engagement. So things to do is basically you just have to focus on the amount of your interactions or your publications, and what we do is we provide a dashboard so you can directly see which publications perform the most in terms of impressions, in terms of interactions, but also in terms of click-through rate, because eventually it's all about also converting traffic on your website. So you just have to see which theme works the most, interests your community the most, what kind of content indeed, and when also you should definitely post this content, which day, which hour of the day. and eventually we'll be able to optimize the way you publish your content and optimize your level of engagement.
It feels like Facebook is a fast-moving target. You learn how to use it, and then 5 minutes later they've changed something. One of the things they've changed recently in terms of marketing opportunities is the subscribe button. So you can subscribe to an individual's account, and then you can follow their public posts without you having to become a friend of them. And so that could maybe be particularly exciting to, useful to celebrities, for example, who want to talk to people on Facebook, maybe don't want a page. And so at Le Web this week, it was announced that there's going to be a button that people can put on websites, and so you can subscribe to people and their feed straight from a website without having to go directly to Facebook. So, Victoria, how can when should that be used, and should people be considering subscribe buttons and things like that, or should businesses stick to pages? What's going on?
So I must say, for businesses, we haven't heard a lot of them wanting to use the subscribe button, but I think where it really makes sense is where you are producing content that people might reasonably want to subscribe to. So I think for celebrities, it's ideal. For bloggers, it's ideal. For thought leaders, it's ideal. And then I would say for media companies, it could be ideal as well. So basically, anyone that you might reasonably, that they're pushing out regular kinds of content and opinions and news, then you would want to subscribe to that news, which I think it's helpful because it's sort of, it feels more lightweight perhaps than saying I'm going to like or fan. The fan has gone away now, but so yeah, I think it's probably most exciting for celebrities, bloggers, thought leaders, those sort of people.
Yeah, well, you just mentioned it's kind of more lightweight, and there's a kind of Twitter-esque casual following of content there. So on that note, I'm looking at the clock and seeing we just have a couple of minutes left. Just very quickly, where does Facebook sit? I mean, Google Plus is very much being talked about as possibly something that brands should be considering. Matthieu, at the moment, should brands and businesses be looking seriously at Google Plus?
Well, maybe not seriously, but just be there.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
Because you have to maintain your presence and any kind of new social media platform which is relevant. In terms of community, of course, there's no critical mass at all. So at least just be there and see what's going on. but you definitely don't have the critical mass, so you can optimize in your actions on a daily period, as we were saying about Facebook. So just be there, watch out, and see what's going on. I mean, there's certainly some things to do, but for now, in terms of actions, there's not much to offer in terms of experiences, in terms of contents. It's all about branding for now. Branding for now, like it was on Facebook maybe 5 years ago. Here we talk about new experiences, a new way to interact with around the world, make it more social, make it more personal also, and we're definitely not there on Google Plus for now.
Okay, well, we're going to have to wrap it up there, but thank you for a fantastic discussion. Matthieu, Victoria, and Jan, thank you.
Thanks.